Because most people that move into Cape Coral move to kind of get away.
To get away from the heavy traffic is what he tells me. However, with so many storage buildings all over Cape Coral, including close to his home, he worries it will take away what he believes is the beauty.
What they're doing is they're actually building a whole brand new storage facility.
The Cape Coral City Council is looking at a 9-month moratorium, no permits or buildings, because of how many of these are already here.
I'm just wondering, is there such a need for so many storage units because there is an abundance going up around Cape Coral?
The city said there are 1.5 million square feet of self-storages already. That's equivalent of 26 football fields. On top of this, another 1.6 million square feet of storage buildings in the permitting or building phase. If the city passes the moratorium, leaders will take those 9 months to look further into regulations and how to handle the growth and demand.
I know this whole area is just going to expand more and more and more, but the last thing I would really want more over there is business.
When I was speaking with one of the spokeswomen with the city of Cape Coral, she did explain to me that even though tomorrow is the second and final public hearing, it doesn't mean that the council will be voting on approval. Like always, we will continue to follow this and update you. From the Cape, Brianna Brownlee, Fox 4.
A detention hearing for the Air National Guardsman charged with leaking classified documents on social media has been postponed. Today, a judge granted a request from his lawyer, who asked for more time to prepare. 21-year-old Jack Teixeira is accused of posting classified intelligence, including sensitive information on the war in Ukraine. He has not yet entered a formal plea. Today in Washington, House Republicans are jump-starting work on an immigration and border enforcement package. The drafted legislation would make it more difficult to apply for asylum and easier for the government to stop migrants from entering the U.S. Earlier this week, U.S. border authorities said they encountered more migrants at the southern border in March compared to February. Even if Republicans pass a bill through the House, they're unlikely to gain bipartisan support in the Senate. India is on track to become the world's most populated nation. Today, the United Nations released new data showing India will surpass China by the middle of this year. The hope is that India's young population can help fuel economic growth for years to come.
In between the protests and marches, legal uncertainties, and rulings in waiting, many doctors are playing a continued game of what-ifs on the future of medication abortion.
In the OBGYN community, especially in the abortion provider community, we have been focused on this case since around December.
Patients and providers shouldn't be panicking day to day, trying to figure out what the law is today and how it's going to change tomorrow. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's causing a lot of confusion and chaos.
The FDA has approved 2 drugs taken one after another for medicated abortion, mifepristone and misoprostol. Doctors don't prescribe mifepristone alone for medicated abortion. The FDA has approved mifepristone as a 1-dose pill taken up to 10 weeks or 70 days. Misoprostol is taken 24 to 72 hours after mifepristone. With the meds, the uterus can't grow a pregnancy and contracts and empties. Doctors can prescribe misoprostol by itself, but it's not preferred.
The protocol that uses just misoprostol alone, it's slightly less effective than the one, that is the combination of mifepristone and misoprostol. It requires multiple doses, and you have to take it up to 3 or 4 times, depending on how far along a person is.
Doctors like Michelle Brown in Illinois are hearing from more fearful patients worried about how safe or how effective mifepristone is, or how well an only misoprostol alternative could work.
We're not getting into the details of efficacy rates on the phone when we're scheduling that. And we also don't want to unnecessarily alarm patients and say, well, if you come in next week, we might only have this less effective regimen, because we just don't know yet.
Meanwhile, a new survey of nearly 20,000 patients across 49 Planned Parenthood and academic abortion clinics found just a third of patients knew about abortion pills they could use at home. 1 in 8 considered self-managing with meds, botanicals, or self-harm before attending the clinic, and some of those, 1 in 3, attempted to do it. Some of their reasons why: they couldn't access care or preferred to self-manage at home. If the Supreme Court does not act right away. After Wednesday, doctors will essentially be told that they should only be prescribing mifepristone for patients up to 7 weeks of their pregnancy instead of the 10 weeks it is now. Doctors, however, could ignore that. They could still prescribe the drug through something called off-label use. Off-label use is very common. It is very legal. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality say that today, 1 in 5 prescriptions that doctors are writing are for a medication to be used off-label.
Some lawmakers along political lines are criticizing the withdrawal under Biden and others pointing to steps under the Trump administration. On the heels of the administration's report on the withdrawal, that's drawn questions about accountability. As Congress returns this week, so does criticism and questions into the Biden administration's withdrawal from Afghanistan.
There was only a cold reality of either following through on the agreement to withdraw our forces or escalating the conflict and sending thousands more American troops back into combat in Afghanistan, lurching into the 3rd decade of conflict. I stand squarely behind my decision.
20 months after the U.S. withdrawal from its longest war, the Biden administration released its highly anticipated 12-page summary from the National Security Council, which details lessons learned in the decision-making process.
He continues to believe that the order to withdraw from Afghanistan was the right one.
But the report largely puts the failures on the Trump administration, stating Biden's choices were severely constrained by conditions created by his predecessor, such as the deal with the Taliban, the strength of the Taliban, decreased troop presence, and lack of plans.
I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was unfair, and I thought it was a rewriting of history.
Former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper served for 18 months under President Trump before being fired the day after Election Day for disagreeing with the president on military policy.
Where we were in the implementation process of the peace agreement was months, if not ever, away from the actual evacuation plan. Again, I was working on and so was Secretary Pompeo, that we were going to have a conditions-based plan. So I was not at the point where I would have reviewed the military plans being drafted by the field commander.
Esper told Scripps News Trump, Biden, and many in Congress wanted out of Afghanistan, but that the process should have been more deliberate and the plan conditions-based.
It really seemed to point the majority of the blame to the previous administration without recognizing the fact that the President Biden had multiple things he could have done, he could have changed, particularly in the 9 months or so that he had to do it. And so that's the part that I really have a lot of trouble with. I would have recommended to President Biden, make the Taliban live up to their end of the deal. Tell them that if they don't agree to the things that they had agreed to in writing, that we were going to keep our troops there in country and we're going to extend them.
The Biden administration has pushed back against this assertion.
He had to take 8 months to plan because whatever plans there might have been done by the previous administration, we didn't see. And it was not apparent that there was a lot of planning done.
Now it's Congress's turn.
The fact is that it was Donald Trump's Taliban deal that set the chaos in motion.
The administration released a report that I believe whitewashed and shamelessly shift-blamed about the execution of deadly withdrawal.
In a series of hearings this week, House members will hear from the Inspector General for both the State Department and DOD, as well as firsthand accounts from national security experts. And this week, a new report from the Association of Wartime Allies on Afghanistan detailed what it called a dire situation on the pace of the special immigrant visa process. Its survey revealed the majority of applicants are waiting for an interview or approval, and details targeted killings by the Taliban because of association with the United States.
You may have noticed more urgent care centers opening in your area. Demand for these services surged during the pandemic, and it's expected to grow even more over the coming years. The latest numbers from the Urgent Care Association show the number of patients at these centers is up 60% from 2019. Urgent care centers can be more convenient, offering treatment outside of when your doctor's office is open. They also cost less than going to the ER, but they may cost more than your primary care doctor. There are other times doctors say these centers aren't the best choice.
They are not meant to replace seeing your primary care provider over time. So ear infections, strep throat, pink eye for children, mild asthma flares. Those are all conditions that are well treated by an urgent care center.
Dr. Rebecca Burns is an urgent care medical director. In her research, she found that kids who have a high reliance on urgent care are seeing their primary care provider less, even for regular checkups. She says your child needs to see their regular pediatrician for things like monitoring for growth and development, screening for issues with school or mental health conditions, and managing chronic conditions like obesity or asthma. Burns tells us it's best to call the pediatrician's office first before going to urgent care.
Even if the primary care provider feels you need to seek care today and they want you to go to an urgent care center, there are a lot of different types of urgent care centers out in the market right now, and they may have a preference for which urgent care center that you seek care at.
Not all centers will be staffed by pediatricians either.
All right, Southwest Florida, it's time to get you a check of the forecast. I'm meteorologist Shred Eric. Today, we're going to see some high-level clouds moving across the state. So we'll see a mix of sun and clouds here throughout the afternoon with our temperatures in the mid-80s. And for tomorrow, a little more moisture starts to build back in. So late in the day, a 20 to 30% chance of a shower on an easterly breeze. It'll be with us near 10 miles per hour. We should dry out a little more on Friday with the showers over towards the East Coast. So for today, what we're looking at is another day that's going to be nice. Sunny skies with, again, some of those high-level clouds moving on by. And then overnight tonight, we're going to see our temperatures dip right back in the mid-60s as that east-northeasterly wind continues 5 to 10. Now, as we look ahead here at the extended forecast, we are looking at isolated showers on Thursday, a little breezy to wrap up the weekend, and temperatures could be a little cooler there Sunday and Monday, depending upon the proximity of the next cold front, and a couple of isolated showers not out of the question there on Tuesday afternoon.
We're in Jackson, Mississippi. This white building next to me is now a consignment shop, but it used to be painted pink, and it used to be the state of Mississippi's only abortion clinic. That's up until the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade. Now, critics are saying Mississippi and conservative states just like it are not as pro-life as they have claimed to be. They're saying that those pro-life stances have not extended past the womb. However, Mississippi's governor fighting back, saying, yes, they are.
That's good. Yeah. When it comes to pregnancy and motherhood, Mississippi mom Brittany Lampkin will tell you she's been through a lot, including losing one of her children.
Unfortunately, I lost my angel probably about an hour or two after I gave birth. I think I can admit that I'm actively battling depression, and that comes with like some loss of time, memory, but that's how I became an advocate.
Lampkin calls herself a healthy mom advocate in a state that falls behind the curve with some of the highest rates of infant and maternal mortality rates. But Lampkin says she's excited to see that Mississippi got this one right.
Now we can breathe.
After years of resisting expansion of Medicaid, the public health care support for the poor, Republicans are now embracing it in some cases.
89 yeas, 29 nays, the bill passes.
Like here in Mississippi, the state expanded coverage for postpartum mothers and their infants up to 12 months. In red states that oppose abortion rights, this coverage is part of what the Mississippi governor calls, quote, a new pro-life agenda. In mid-March, Mississippi expanded Medicaid for postpartum mothers, something lawmakers had turned down 3 times since 2021. They joined half a dozen other states in reversing course. Lampkin says she wants other health care providers to pay attention too.
I think that Medicaid has opened the door to the opportunity for other insurance providers to get on board with that.
Medicaid helps people with little to no income. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, patients usually pay a small copay to $0 for covered medical expenses. Medicaid covers about 4 in 10 births in the U.S. Federal law requires states to provide pregnancy-related Medicaid coverage up to 60 days postpartum. But in 2022, President Biden announced the American Rescue Plan included an option for states to offer 12 months of postpartum Medicaid eligibility. But some state legislatures voted not to accept that money, leading activists to allege they were pro-birth but not pro-life.
I don't believe that issues surrounding the health of babies, both born and unborn, or women's health, should ever be political chess pieces.
The Supreme Court abortion rights question started here in Jackson with the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case. Officials estimate ending abortion rights will result in 5,000 new births annually in a state already grappling with high mortality rates for infants and their mothers. For Republican Representative Missy McGee, who pushed legislation to extend postpartum coverage, the time was right.
This year, as we find ourselves in a post-Dobbs era, the need exists to both strengthen the social safety net and modernize our approach for helping our state's most vulnerable citizens.
The Hattiesburg lawmaker serves as vice chair of the state's Public Health and Human Services Committee and is one of only 25 female state lawmakers out of 174 members.
I've often heard the statement that Mississippi takes pride in being the safest state for a baby to be born. This bill demonstrates that we, as policymakers, also recognize that our commitment to life cannot end once the baby takes his or her first breath and is outside of the womb.
Lampkin says this extra time can help moms really heal from childbirth and allow them to bond with their newborns. And then there's the mental health aspect.
Postpartum depression is a real thing. It's talked about, but is there a treatment program? I think now we can dive into those things, dive into things like that. Even I'd call out Medicaid and those private insurance providers to implement some sort of supplement or incentive program for mental health checkups.
Tammy Eswick, Scripps News, Jackson, Mississippi.
Were you happy with your tax refund this year? Well, if not, there's some steps you can take right now to set yourself up for a better refund next year.
According to the IRS, the average refund is down nearly 10% this year, from $3,200 in 2022 to $2,900.
We're certainly seeing a good deal of refund shock this year.
If you're thinking my refund wasn't anywhere close to that, Mark Stieber of Jackson Hewitt says it may be time to review your filing status or your tax withholding statement.
Didn't get a big enough refund, or in some cases got too big a refund and you want some of that money. Be sure to talk to your Department of HR and ask them, can you increase or decrease your withholding, or a tax pro can help you do the same.
For a larger refund next year, think about which tax credits you may qualify for, such as credits for buying an electric car or installing solar panels to your home. Also, contribute to a health savings account, which reduces your taxable income while helping you plan for medical costs. And make sure to maximize your retirement contributions. Lastly, Mark says save yourself from refund shock by doing a mid-year tax checkup in July.
Estimate where you are and fix it with the time that you have remaining, either more withholding or less withholding, or if something else, you might need to adjust for that too.
Do one more estimate in November or December. That way, come tax time, there are no surprises about the size of your refund and you don't waste your money.
It's breaking news.
And we begin today with breaking news as the Supreme Court is now delaying its decision on the abortion pill, mifepristone.
Supreme Court Justice Sam
for all of us with loved ones attending or working in schools. And tonight, local leaders are saying they're adding a new detection system as an added layer of protection. Thank you for joining us for Fox 4 News at 5. I'm Nadine Yanis.
And I'm Shari Armstrong. So this is called the Open Gate System, and it goes into effect for next school year. Our Fox 4's Elise Chingari is live at Diplomat Middle School now to tell us everything the district explained today when it comes to this type of security. Elise.
Yes, and this is an added layer of security for all of the schools within the Lee County School District. That means the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And we're talking about schools like the one right here behind me in Cape Coral. And I also want to clarify that SROs like the one you see here will still remain at the schools as well. So this is what we're talking about, that extra layer of security. Right now, the device has been approved and it's in the planning stages, but it will gradually be added to schools throughout the new school year. David Newland. Has to walk through it. So that's students, faculty, and staff, also as well as visitors who are going inside of the schools. Coming up on Fox 4 News at 6 o'clock, you will hear from the parents as my photographer and I walked up and down that line of parents picking up their kids. You'll hear their reaction coming up at 6 o'clock. Live here in Lee County, Elise Chingari, Fox 4.
Elise.
The Lee County Sheriff's Office says it is investigating this death as a homicide.
As deputies shut down news about a major step in the repair of Ian-damaged seawalls right behind their home, Shari.
Right, but instead, a meeting where Punta Gorda City staff planned to recommend 3 contractors for the projects now rescheduled, leaving some of those homeowners you were talking about very frustrated. So Fox 4's Colton Chavez joins us live from the Punta Gorda Isles community. And Colton, homeowners you spoke with say they are just tired of waiting.
Tired of waiting, Shari, because for the past 6 months, this has been the view outside of their home, a completely destroyed and cracked open canal, the seawall you can see right in front of you. And now many of them are saying, are we going to have to wait another 6 months before we start to see any of the improvements actually take place? An eyesore for some homeowners. Coming up on Fox 4 News at 6 o'clock, why seasonal visitors may be spending more time down here than at their homes up north. I'm working on that part of the story for you when I check in at the top of the hour. But for now, live in Punta Gorda, Colton Chavez, Fox 4.
Colton, thank you so much. And keeping an eye on post-Hurricane Ian coverage. You know, one thing we talked about a lot was evacuations and a lot of questions surrounding the evacuation process. And today, Cape Coral City leaders are trying to improve for the next storm.
You can only imagine the traffic on Cape Coral on a regular day, let alone when people are trying to evacuate. So the focus here will be on the roads and whether improving some of the routes away from Cape Coral could cut down on evacuation times. Meteorologist Andrew Shipley now looking into this study's finding. Sir, look at this. What did we learn after Ian?
Yeah, now we're 6 weeks away from hurricane season on June 1st. And to stay ready, Cape Coral City leaders are looking at roads, whether different routes or even adding more lanes are necessary with more people moving to the area. Now, the study looks at the 2020 population level and projections for 2024. So under the 2020 levels, the study says that 28% of Cape Coral would need to evacuate under a Category 1. It would take about 14 hours or so. How about a Category 2? That jumps to 36% with a time frame of about 15 hours. Now let's jump this up to a Category 5. The study then finds that 68% of Cape Coral should evacuate, a process that would take about 37 hours. Now, under 2045 population levels, the stronger the storm, the steeper the curve would get. Now, under Category 1, it would just take a little bit longer, but at Category 5, that would go up from 37 hours to more than 76 hours. The study also looks into Lee County's evacuation times. A similar theme for Category 5 storm in 2020, 47 hours to evacuate, but with a 2045 population, 88 hours more. That's 3.5 days. So the other thing we're looking at is the roads. Could that help evacuations, including connecting Del Prado to I-75, as well as adding lanes to Midpoint Bridge? The study will also look into making Pine Island its own evacuation zone. Now, as we all know, the final results won't be here until about mid-May, but with hurricane season approaching, this is always a good reminder to review your hurricane plan and knowing your zone. In studio, meteorologist Andrew Shipley, Fox 4.
Thanks, Andrew. Hard to believe 6 weeks away already. Well, still to come here on Fox 4 News at 5.
Yeah, critics call it the Don't Say Gay bill. And
heading out this evening, but this time tomorrow, we will be tracking showers and storms. We'll talk more about the timeline and where we have the best chance of seeing those storms develop next.
Have some rain to catch up on. It's still really dry out there.
Exactly right. We still need several inches of rainfall across the board to fully catch up. But I can tell you this, recent rainfall absolutely helped to dampen the spread of that fire. It could have been much worse had we not received those inches of rain that we did, say, the last couple of days. So here we are, the latest drought index map, and we're seeing a lot of blue. That's a good thing, something we have not seen much of here in the last couple of months. Even Lee, Charlotte, Sarasota, we are drying out, so definitely trending the right direction. Every bit of rainfall helps. Of course, on the flip side, for those of us still dealing with damage, rain obviously not welcome. So it just goes to show that we really need to step up on those repairs as we continue to get closer to the official start of rainy season, which is traditionally around mid-May. Live look now across the Caloosahatchee River from the Luminary Hotel, downtown Fort Myers. Just some partly cloudy skies out there. Earlier, we had more mid and upper level clouds, but that little disturbance has already swung on through. We're at 83 degrees. Dew point, measure of moisture in the air, feeling pretty nice, sitting in the mid-50s. The lower the dew point goes, the more comfortable the air feels outside, and overall, considering the time of year, those are pretty pleasant dew points. Winds right now out of the east at 9 miles per hour, helping you plan out your evening, maybe to take advantage of what will be a beautiful sunset right around 7:53. We can expect partly cloudy skies, then eventually mostly clear skies overnight. Temperatures dropping from the 80s into the 70s by around 8 o'clock. So at the surface, high pressure is still in control, and that will prevent any rainfall from developing for today. Notice our radar nice and quiet here across southwest Florida, but this time tomorrow, that's going to be a bit different. Let's take a closer look. So for the rest of this evening, partly cloudy, becoming mostly clear. So tomorrow morning, a fairly sunny start expected. Grab those sunglasses for your morning commute. Light winds forecast in the morning out of the northeast, 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then heading into the afternoon, basically after 2 p.m., isolated showers and storms will be developing with the heating of the day. Also, you will be noticing a bit more humidity out there as well. So instead of those nice comfy dew points, those dew points will start to climb back to the 60s, and you will certainly feel that sticky factor increasing. So with the extra humidity, the heat, we will be tracking isolated showers and storms developing for the afternoon and evening. That means there could be some impacts as we head into the afternoon and evening commutes. Heads up there. Otherwise, we clear everything out just after sunset. And for the rest of tomorrow night, we're fairly quiet. Heading into Friday, rinse and repeat. Quiet first half of the day, second half of the day. Isolated showers and storms will be developing. As for those temperatures, tomorrow we'll be pushing into the upper 80s. Winds generally out of the east, southeast, 10 to 15 miles per hour. 30% rain chance for tomorrow, as well as your Friday into Saturday. Saturday night, a cold front comes through, and on its backside will be a bit drier and breezier for your Sunday into Monday. So if you're making those plans, just keep that in mind.
Personal one every family has to make. Many families have long traditions of using a particular plot.
Quinn says even if a veteran doesn't want to be buried in a VA-funded cemetery, there are other benefits available to their families after they die, including headstones or medallions.
Those three prongs is where we're trying to hit this the strongest, to make sure veterans understand, make sure the families understand, as well as the funeral homes that the family is engaged with.
In Riverside, Villalobos started his own outreach effort to raise awareness locally with something that resembles a credit card.
78,000 veterans are served by Loma Linda Healthcare, the VA Medical Center. In the back, they hold all the QR codes, so all the documents necessary to find eligibility, your headstone, what national cemetery you want to be buried in. It's all here in this card. On this spring day, a special interment. An unhoused veteran who was a member of an underwater demolition team and later the Navy SEALs. It's a tough story. A lot of vets, go through it. A lot of us here have PTSD. He was seemingly forgotten until the unidentified veteran program matched him through the FBI database and called Riverside. They didn't know what kind of a man he was, just sitting there in a corner somewhere in the street. But we got the chance to pay honors to him, and we did, so, we did our job. It's grave sites like this one that stick with Villalobos. He got the same love he did as a child at the end. So I think it's poetic justice. And, in the end, that's our job. We always take care of our own. So we make sure, when we can, we do it. The final way to honor and serve those who have served for us. There's literally tens of thousands of stories out here. Tuskegee Airmen, Navajo Code Talkers, people like I told you, like Corporal Patino and Killed in Actions that gave their life for this country. And if they came out here and found these stories, I think it would be moving for everybody. Maritza Giorgio, Scripps News, Riverside, California.
And you can learn more about eligibility and apply for burial and memorial benefits at cem.va.gov.
Well, switching now to our continuing coverage of our housing crisis. Tonight, we are in Collier County.
Yeah, where new numbers show a dramatic
More or less spot on for this time of year, but we're going to be seeing that mercury rise starting tomorrow, and our rain chances go up as well. We'll talk more about that in your 7-day forecast next.
It's breaking news.
Well, we are continuing to cover our insurance crisis tonight, and if you are a homeowner and you pay insurance in Florida, you're going to want to be ready for your premiums to go up this year.
Yeah, this is all an effort to have enough money for claims that were filed with insurance companies that have now gone insolvent. UPC, we've covered this one. So the state's insurance regulation is now tacking on a 1% emergency fee to cover those open claims. Our housing reporter, Caitlin Knapp, live for us tonight, watching out for you and what this could mean for your bill. And Caitlin, who asked to implement this fee? Because boy, is it tacking on to homeowners already.
It was from the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association, or FIGA, which is a nonprofit association that was created by the Florida legislature to handle claims of insolvent insurance companies or those on the verge of becoming insolvent. And we know that so many have done this over the past year, even one that just happened back in February. So why put this certain bill on the homeowners, this particular fee? Well, according to the association, they need money to pay the covered claims that those insurance companies, now gone, were supposed to pay for. This also includes companies, again, who are on the verge of running out of money because of losses from hurricanes such as Irma, Michael, and Ian. That's how far back this goes. And with no money, those claims stand still. Florida Gulf Coast University real estate professor Dr. Shelton Weeks says you, as a homeowner, will see an increase in your policy starting October 1st.
They're going to have higher rates, and hopefully we'll still have approximately the same number of insurance providers available as options in the market.
I reached out to the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation, the agency who received the request for this fee. The spokesperson said in part, assessments are used to secure funds, typically for the payment of covered claims related to the new insolvencies. So homeowners with open claims during an insolvency will see those claims addressed and paid. Assessments are approved by the FIGA Board of Directors. Now, with insurance going up, you're probably wondering how long emergency assessment fee going to last? That's a story I'm working on for you tonight on Fox 4 at 6. Reporting live in Cape Coral, Caitlin Knapp, Fox 4.
And I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning into that as well at 6 o'clock. Well, tonight, in one of our wealthiest counties, homelessness grows. New numbers out today show a staggering increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness in Collier County.
And you know, Nadine, it's really no surprise, according to experts who work in this field. They say the 52% increase in homelessness in Collier County is almost exclusively due to the skyrocketing cost of housing and damage from Hurricane Ian.
The tip of the iceberg when it comes to covering our housing crisis.
So coming up tonight on Fox 4 News at 6, investigative reporter Ryan Kruger is looking into why they believe the true number of homelessness in our community is several times what was counted. Well, also new tonight, we are hearing the moment a woman called
State Board of Education put new limits on the teaching of gender identity and sexual orientation in all public schools this afternoon.
You for Fox 4 News at 6.
Yeah, Fox 4 is following through on a
out. Her rescue mutt named Finn. And with a lot of the good humor that she had, the dog could have been named Huckleberry Finn, for that matter. All at the young age of 42. All of this at the young age of 42. Jen, you have achieved more. But we're grateful. Jen, thank you for the time you've invested in our great nation. You have fought the good fight, and I pray you're at peace, knowing the positive impact that you've had, not only in the halls of Congress, but to every single person and staff member you've come in contact with. I want to urge all of my colleagues to keep Jen and her family in your prayers. And I want to end with a Bible verse from Deuteronomy 31:6 that says, quote, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you, and he will never leave you nor forsake you." God in heaven, hear our prayers for our
Their understanding of the issues, the vast experience, their ability to focus. Jen is one of those individuals, one of the catalysts, I'll say, of the legislative process. Now I would like to turn, I believe, to my colleague from Oregon and recognize her to discuss a fellow Oregonian. As much time as you may consume.
Mr. Lucas, Chair Lucas, thank you for the opportunity.
There have been plenty of shots over the years that Mikey O'Brien has taken, and there have been plenty he has missed. Mikey O'Brien is a sophomore at Clark University. He's a point guard for this school's Division III basketball team.
There's always something that you can work on and you get better at.
Dribbling between his athletic life and his academic one, though, is often challenging, especially the last few years.
Basketball is one of those sports that asks a lot of you all at once, and I feel like that translates to life in itself because you're never just going to be asked to do one thing and one thing only.
That's why this 20-year-old has started a full court press of sorts when it comes to tackling his mental health struggles. Yes, Mikey and his teammates practice drills in the gym, but many of the young men on his team are now meeting regularly to talk about some of the stresses they're dealing with.
Asking for help is not something that you should be embarrassed about, but rather something that you should look to improve yourself or just to work through like difficult times with somebody instead of by yourself.
According to the CDC, half of college students reported having a psychiatric episode in the last year. 73% of students experienced some sort of mental health crisis during college. And 1/3 of all students report having been so depressed during school they had trouble functioning.
The pandemic abruptly interrupted their ability to engage in important tasks that they have to master.
Dr. Nadia Ward oversees the Mazakowski Institute at Mikey's college. Their goal is to help young people and adolescents develop social and emotional skills.
So you see more young people anxious, you see more young people depressed.
She's been working one-on-one with the men's basketball team here, helping them better navigate mental health struggles and find ways to cope.
How do you manage the stressor and the pressure that comes with being a scholar athlete?
As part of a new push to help young people manage those struggles, they're developing a new app. This is video provided by the school, talking about how the app will let students take a quick assessment quiz and then offers tools for ways to help. Dr. Nadia Ward says there is a particular concern for young black men.
They are the least likely to indicate that they need help, right? And most likely to be struggling with anxiety and depression and behavioral health concerns.
Back on the court, Mikey O'Brien is getting ready for next season.
You also know you're not alone when you have a bunch of people next to you who are feeling the same way and you're talking about what your emotions are.
Focusing on becoming a better player, both on and off the court. I'm Chris Conti.
Farmers say they feel forgotten when it comes to talking about high suicide rates. The new help they're starting to seek out. Well, even with all the talk about mental health, farmers say they still feel like they're not involved enough in the overall conversation. According to federal data, they die by suicide at the same rate as veterans. Dan Grossman shows us what some states are doing to help with that.
In the vast open lands known as Wyoming, there is a beauty. But go to certain places here, and tucked away in mountains hidden from view, there is also a pain.
You're out here kind of remote, and then as you're kind of remote, you become more accustomed with being alone.
For decades, Hugh Turk has called this parcel of land in rural northeastern Wyoming home. Only a small chapter in the century-long story of his family's ranching here.
You get kind of loaded with self-doubt, and I think that's sort of why it's linked to depression. And
Wyoming has the highest suicide rate in the country, 30.5 deaths for every 100,000 people, a number more than double the national average. Many of those people are agricultural producers like Hugh, who are taught to carry that baggage and tough it out instead of addressing it. In mid-July, Wyoming became one of 5 states to launch its new Agri-Stress Helpline. Much like the national 988 number, it aims to provide 24/7 mental health help and support, this time for ag producers who are often isolated with the weight of legacy, variability, and toxic ideas of how to deal with it. Lucy Pauley is with the Wyoming Department of Agriculture, the group that funds the hotline. Along with Missouri, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Virginia, Wyoming's is starting to gain more popularity with each passing month. Significant baby steps for an issue that has been mired in decades of stigma.
How are you? How are you guys? Good.
Years ago, Hugh helped start this self-help group, the Alliance for Hope, as a way for people to have some sort of outlet in a place where there often wasn't one. In Casey, Wyoming, I'm Dan Grossman.
The popularity around a particular drug to treat mental health is growing. The reason some say it's offering hope for those with conditions that are resistant to other treatments. Well, the use of psychedelic drugs for mental health treatment is getting more popular. We take it back to Dan Grossman, who shows us why some say these treatments are so helpful.
It starts with the administration.
For many of us, the idea of a reality void of everything but thought can be terrifying.
I started to feel lightheaded.
But for Eric, whose voice you are hearing now,
my sense of vision of the room kind of closed in and the room darkened.
The void is where he finds peace.
This is kind of an existential situation where, do I exist? Am I alive? So am I going to be in this void and freaking out, running around in my head going, ah, or am I going to explore?
Eric is describing what it feels like to experience the world of esketamine, a derivative of the powerful dissociative drug ketamine that was approved for limited use in treating mental health disorders in 2019. Unlike many of the treatments for depression and anxiety nowadays, esketamine, a Schedule III substance, can dissociate a person from their feelings, allowing them to look at them and analyze them without feeling the sometimes debilitating paralysis from them.
This room is where I've had most of my experiences.
For people like Eric, who was diagnosed with treatment-resistant depression recently, the therapy he gets at his approved clinic can sometimes feel like the only way forward.
It was a big change.
Nationwide, similar treatments for Schedule I drugs are becoming more widely available. In 2017, the FDA labeled MDMA, one of the compounds found in ecstasy, a breakthrough therapy for PTSD, expediting its development and review. In 2019, the same was done for esketamine, and now other drugs like psilocybin, which are found in psychedelic mushrooms, are being reviewed for their benefits with anxiety and depression. In 2019, the FDA labeled it a breakthrough therapy, and in 2020, Oregon became the first state to legalize its use in treating mental health disorders. Denise Hosier is a nurse practitioner at an esketamine clinic and says these various drugs offer hope to people who feel like they may have none. Across the country, around 30% of people with depression are diagnosed as being treatment resistant, meaning months and sometimes years of counseling and antidepressants have had no observable benefits.
I do think as a treatment it is gaining popularity, and the results we've seen have been really great, and people have hope and they get some relief from their depression, and so that's been really great to see.
The treatments are expensive. In some cases, they can cost upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 per month. Some insurance plans pay up to 75% of that, and some pay none. I'm Dan Grossman.
Some simple ways to help improve your mental health include connecting with other people and staying physically active. I'm Michelle London. Thank you so much for joining us.
If there was a brochure for the American dream, it could look like this. A nice house with a white picket fence. But in today's America, many people will tell you having your own place to rent or own is far from reality. This week, we're looking at the state of housing in America.
There's just really nowhere for people to live.
From how old motels could be a new solution for homelessness to what you can expect the White House to do to help with housing costs.
$1 million gets you this?
You'd be lucky. Yes. This is The Race. What it takes to buy a house doesn't come overnight. You have to build up credit, you have to save up enough money. It's very difficult, and many of us know just how hard the home buying process is right now. But if you're someone who lost everything to a natural disaster, it can be nearly impossible. And that's why we came here to Chico, California, where hundreds of people in this community who lost everything to a wildfire nearly 4 years ago are still struggling to find a place to live. We're driving through Paradise, California to see what it looks like almost 4 years after a fire destroyed this town. You might be surprised to know that hundreds of people who once lived here, who lost everything in that 2018 fire, are still looking for a place to live.
Had you ever been to Paradise?
No.
Everybody was just so wonderful. I've lived there 33, 34 years.
As I sat with Tammy Huerta, she asked if she could read me something she wrote.
Okay, it'll take a minute.
Please.
Okay. On the morning of November 8, 2018, I thought that if the fire started coming our way, I would grab my dogs and run to Clark Road.
The story of how she escaped the campfire.
And I told God, I don't want to die like this, and I don't want this to be my last day on earth.
Not only does she want you to know how she survived, but how she and many others who were displaced nearly 4 years ago are still struggling today.
People that are still without housing, we need help.
Tammy is now in Chico, about 20 minutes from Paradise. The fire took almost everything she owned.
For 6 months, I didn't want to look at Paradise.
She says as a house cleaner, she can't afford to buy or rent her own place. The median price for a home here is $484,000. The average one-bedroom apartment rents for more than $1,500 a month.
So this is where some people are allowed to stay. The people who are still needing help now are the ones that didn't have the insurance. They were renters typically. If they were homeowners, they were underinsured or didn't have insurance to rebuild.
Jessica Gianola is helping Tammy through the nonprofit Chico Housing Action Team, or CHAT. She says she has more than 300 applications from campfire survivors who can't find a permanent place to live.
We need rent lower, so that we can get into a place and get back on our feet again, working and bringing in more income.
The impact of natural disasters on housing isn't just a problem here. According to CoreLogic, a top data company, last year, 1 in 10 homes across the country was impacted by a natural disaster. And displacement isn't an easy problem to fix. Just take North Carolina, which in May announced $16 million in grants will go to help those still feeling the impact of 2018's Hurricane Florence and 2016's Hurricane Matthew.
Over here is where a lot of people were camping.
Jessica says affordable housing was an issue in Chico before 2018, but it's different today. She drove us to where she's found people living in tents who, before the fire, were never on the path to homelessness.
These people's lives and their professions, the things they've done, the people they've helped, and here they're left with nothing.
Tammy is currently sharing a home CHAT owns with other campfire survivors. What's your path forward? What are you hoping to do now?
I want to get back into Paradise. That's my home, that's my heart.
But with the typical home price in the town almost $70,000 more today than it was before the fire, it may be too expensive for her to ever go home.
When you look at our nation's affordable housing crisis, the answer to it is simple in theory, right? And that's more affordable housing. But something that's always traditionally stood in the way of that is stigma and neighbor opposition. Well, there is absolutely nothing traditional about what's happening in the housing market right now, and some mindsets seem to be changing.
My name's Sean Caswell. I'm the general manager of Casablanca and Texas Club, a few staples here in Reynosa, New Mexico. As simple as I can put it, it's just simple living.
There's a lot to love about this sleepy mountain town, but life the last few years has been anything but simple for the service industry here.
After the pandemic hit, it was It was like, where did everybody go? Everything's short-term rentals, Airbnb. It's tough living for, the backbone of this economy, which is our, local workforce.
Just like everywhere in the United States, we're severely handicapped when it comes to workforce, and one of the biggest contributing factors to that is housing.
It's a similar story in tourism-driven places across the nation. But the hardships this town is facing may be able to change mindsets that were once against the idea of affordable housing.
So that fire just spread to one of our areas, Gavilan Canyon, which is heavily populated with our employees.
In April, a wildfire wiped out about 200 homes in the area and kicked off a scramble for affordable housing. It created the need to reevaluate zoning laws to allow more people to live on less land.
Community's always been 100% for it until you pick a spot. And then it's, well, no, you can't do this, we don't want you to do that.
Changing neighbors' minds about affordable housing is one of the biggest hurdles to its creation. A 2019 Redfin study showed that home buyers and sellers nationwide are nearly twice as likely to oppose housing density in their neighborhood than they are to support it, and more than half support zoning policies that limit density. 27% support it. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition guesses that the country is short 7 million rental homes for low-income renters. That's about 1 in 4 of all rental households nationwide.
And a lot of it is the narrative that's been put out. The people that live there are being brought in from outside the community.
The data, though, disproves the stigma. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition says building 100 affordable housing units generates $11.7 million in local income, $2.2 million in taxes, and 161 local jobs in the first year alone.
What this fire has done and the devastation is put faces. These are some of our firemen that have lost their homes. These are people that work at the hospital. These are people that work at our restaurant.
The village is working on several solutions, including an enterprise fund for housing, tax credits, and building modular homes. Crawford says this is all possible because the state and local governments, as well as the community, are all working together for this goal.
Some of the doors are opening and cracks are showing, and we're running through those. And those people are working with us.
We need it. Desperately.
For business folks like Chan, he hopes more communities change their perspective on affordable housing, so it can be seen not as a nuisance, but a necessity way before a disaster shows them that.
Hopefully, we can get a change of hearts and minds as far as that goes, because, it's your bartender, it's your cook. Those are the people that are living in those homes.
I'm Vanessa Mishanya.
Just off of highways across this country, you will find abandoned old motels that once represented the golden age of the road trip. The plan turning those motels of the past into housing of the future.
Now it's like, yes, it's going to be all right. That's the biggest thing. It's going to be all right.
You're watching The Race.
I'm Vanessa Mishania. Now, in my travels, I am fascinated by old motels. I think they're so cool, and they represent that old golden age of the road trip era that happened in our country. Now, the heyday of the motel may have come and gone, but what if they could be given new life as one solution to the homelessness epidemic? I traveled to one state trying to do that.
2 days ago, I started out on that tent pad.
Okay.
And then I moved to this one yesterday. Being in here gives you that sense of, I can make it. It gives hope. It's like, yes, I'm going to make it through this tough time. It may take a while, but you know, I've got the structure, I've got security.
Structure and security. Two words that mean so much when you've been living without them for as long as Tracy Vaughn has.
Takes a big burden off of people trying to succeed because they can't imagine, you know, what it's like. They lost their sight.
Tracy is a resident at Camp Hope, a transitional living space in Las Cruces, New Mexico, a service that's in high demand here and across the nation.
We have anywhere from 40 to 50 people every night sleeping in our backyard in tents, and we work with them on a housing plan to make sure that we are transitioning them as quickly as possible into their own apartments.
America is short 201,814 shelter beds to house the number of people who need them. Nicole Martinez is the executive director of Mesilla Valley Community of Hope, which runs the camp. She says a lot of state and federal dollars go towards permanent housing, but the type of transitional housing that gets folks like Tracy off the streets while they search gets overlooked. However, Martinez says even though the pandemic forced many people out of large traditional shelters and onto the street, there seems to be some changes happening.
I think with the growing visibility of people sleeping outside, that communities are searching for solutions any way they can.
Her state is now looking at the past as a potential solution. $10 million is going to New Mexico communities to buy old motels and hotels and turn them into transitional housing.
So I think this is an exciting project and will fill a real need in our communities.
States across the country like Montana, Washington, and Colorado have already turned hotels and motels into temporary shelter, but Hank Hughes from the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness says this program could mark a shift in state governments recognizing the need for creative, lasting solutions.
For many years, the state government considered homelessness simply as an urban problem.
I would want to make sure that there is a path toward permanent housing. Good morning.
As promising as these creative ideas are, Nicole hopes the funding will continue to be funneled into transitional housing needs and that the focus on the root issue is not lost.
I think we all want fast solutions. We want the tents gone from our neighborhoods right now. But what we have to remember is these are people, and that without having enough affordable housing, we're going to continue to see people in our neighborhoods who are unhoused.
We're human. We may be homeless temporarily, but we're human.
For people like Tracy, more transitional housing, be it in former motels or in tent cities, means being one step closer to the dream of structure and security.
Now it's like, oh, yes, it's going to be all right. That's the biggest thing. It's going to be all right.
I'm Vanessa Mishania.
The unique plan to build housing for people with disabilities. Next on The Race.
This affordable housing community is different than many. It's offering a unique solution to an issue many communities face. The complex in Silicon Valley, California was built during the pandemic. Randy Suda is the building company CEO.
We provide affordable housing for a wide range of folks in our communities, from families to seniors, and then more recently for adults with developmental disabilities that have the ability to live independently.
15 units out of 71 have been reserved for people living with intellectual or developmental disabilities.
It's a great feeling for these clients, right, to have a place of their own. And also for the parents to know, oh, my son or daughter is part of an inclusive community where they're going to have support in place and I don't really have to worry.
David Piano says this is his first time living independently. He keeps his unit in pristine condition and recently received the Employee of the Year award at his workplace.
I do a janitorial work at the Army Reserve Center.
David says he loves living on his own and having his own schedule.
We have an indoor bike parking lot here for bikes. I'm only 5 minutes from work, so I can ride my bike if I want.
This location is close to public transit, and it's also close to shopping centers and food, which we know is extremely important for our clients because most of them don't drive.
According to Carlene Ponder with the ARC, a nonprofit that stands up for the civil rights of people with disabilities, it's important for people of this demographic to be offered support services like job coaching, financial advice, and healthy lifestyle classes. At the Luna Vista development, they offer those support services.
They're newer models, but they're not exactly the norm, when it comes to housing development. And we need much more of that across the country if we're going to be able to provide homes for people where they want to live.
Carlene says there needs to be creative collaborations between the federal government, banks, and housing developers to offer more affordable housing for people living with developmental disabilities. Randy says it takes many organizations for a community like Luna Vista to work.
We had an incredible partner with the City of Mountain View that were willing to invest a considerable amount of money, about $22 million of local housing funds into this project, that we were then able to leverage through equity from the federal low-income housing tax credit program, as well as loans from Wells Fargo Bank. All of this is supported by the acquisition loan at the very earliest stages of the project from the Silicon Valley Housing Trust. So without their initial $8 million acquisition loan, none of this would have happened.
And in order for that to be possible, Randy says the first step is for communities across the country to welcome the idea of inclusive and affordable housing.
These types of apartments provide housing for folks already in your towns. They're already part of your cities and your communities. They're folks that support you and serve you every day.
In Mountain View, California, I'm Elizabeth Ruiz reporting.
More to come on the race. Stick with us.
This country has two very different housing problems on our hands. On one hand, there's a homelessness crisis, more Americans sleeping on the street in need of just something over their head. And then there's the issue with affordable housing and just being able to own a property you can call your own.
We are in a super central, vibrant neighborhood.
For perspective, we wanted to chat with realtor Trista Bernasconi. She works in real estate in arguably one of the most expensive places in the country, San Francisco.
We're on the top floor.
We aren't here to do a real estate reality TV show, but we are here to see what you get for your money these days in some American cities.
How much is this being listed for?
This listing is just under 1.1 million.
Wait. You said 1.1 million?
Just under.
Trista tells me this is actually a bargain. It's 3 bedrooms with plenty of original features.
$1 million gets you this?
You'd be lucky. Yes.
Expensive real estate has been an issue in this city for years, but what's different now nationwide is that other parts of the country are feeling the high prices too. Just look at the percentage hike in home prices since last year. The prices, coupled with an increase in interest rates, may have you asking, how can someone buy a home? Trista provides some advice.
Fully understand the market.
That understanding includes knowing what government programs are out there, including what income levels qualify for affordable housing in your community. You may be surprised. Every city is different.
In San Francisco, if you make $90,000 a year, there's a chance you could get access to some affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Creating more affordable housing is part of a new push by the White House. The latest plan uses existing funding to encourage cities to change zoning laws so more affordable housing is required to be built. The White House also announced plans to improve financing for builders and incentivize the construction of more tiny homes or modular units.
This is not rocket science.
The tiny home idea makes a lot of sense to Alex Turk. He has worked on housing policy for years and recently launched MyOwnLockandKey.org, a nonprofit to help build more tiny homes in cities like San Francisco. An affordable housing condo could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build, he says. Tiny homes are a fraction of the cost.
The reality is, with this modular, innovative technology, we could build units for $15,000 a pop, $20,000 a pop.
In San Francisco, I'm Joe St. George.
Thank you for joining us this week for our look at housing in America. Join us next week. We're taking a look at issues when it comes to parenting.
Pizza pie.
Children under the age of 5 can now get the COVID vaccine. We're going to doctors for the facts, as some parents are hesitant. Until then, from Chico, California, I'm Chris Stewart, and this is The Race.
From groceries and gas to housing and rent, we know life is expensive.
$1,650.
Could you afford that?
I cannot afford that.
That's why we're looking at ways to help make your dollar go further with solutions to record inflation.
Saves money, saves wear and tear on your car.
Plus, how to make sure no one is taking advantage of you.
Just entirely inappropriate as far as I'm concerned.
Lesson learned, I will never do that again.
So you don't waste your money.
Hi there, I'm John Matarese. Thanks for joining us this half hour as we look back at the top Don't Waste Your Money stories of 2022. We know how hard you work for your money, so we work hard every day to help you save and protect your hard-earned dollars. After a year of skyrocketing inflation, everyone can relate to our first story. We talked to a couple of meal planning experts about how to save on your grocery bill so you don't waste your money.
Allison Crowdis is the ultimate meal planner.
Sweet potatoes, red bell pepper, white onion, and green beans.
She runs a meal delivery service called Dinner to Doorbells.
White chicken lasagna.
Along with business partner Jen Eisenstein. And they're very careful to buy only what they know they will use that week.
It's a very deliberate meal for this day.
One of the big advantages of meal planning or using a service like this is you don't end up overbuying, purchasing too many ingredients, and having to throw them all away a few months later.
You know your budget, you know your grocery budget, then you can plan within that budget.
Jen, Allison, and other shopping experts say planning each meal in advance can save $100 or more on groceries every month.
When people look at their total spending, all of their spending, the category that always surprises them is grocery spending.
Founder of CouponMom.com, Stephanie Nelson says, on top of making a list, compare prices of common items.
You pick like 2 or 3 stores a week, and you cherry pick the best deals at each store.
Also, cut back on impulse purchases by limiting how often you shop.
If you're going 4 times a week now, if you can cut that down to once.
According to the USDA, the average family wastes $1,500 a year on uneaten food. So what can you do? Stephanie suggests buying only the items you need, making smart substitutions for less expensive items, and swapping at least one restaurant meal for an extra meal at home. Jen and Allison say planning the week's meals on Sunday can save you money and time Monday through Friday.
Dump it onto a sheet pan, throw it in the oven, and then it's ready to go.
That way you don't overspend and you don't waste your money.
Another struggle for so many people this past year, rising rent prices. The truth is, there's not much you can do about what you pay for rent. But as we found out in our next report, there are ways to cut costs elsewhere.
Stephanie Blanchard could soon have no place to live. This mom with 3 children is desperate after her landlord decided to raise her low-income apartment rent to market rate, which would mean a $600 rent hike she can't possibly afford.
I'm gonna be honest, I just can't.
She says every other 2-bedroom apartment near her is renting for $1,300 or more.
$1,650.
Could you afford that?
I cannot afford that.
She's not alone. A recent Freddie Mac survey found rent increased for nearly 60% of renters in the past year, with a third seeing increases of 10% or more.
But fighting a rent hike can be impossible. That's because rent is rarely negotiable. Plus, most communities don't have a law limiting the size of rent hikes. That means you may have to take a hard look at your spending elsewhere.
You might find things you forgot you were paying for. Those are easy wins.
Kelsey Sheehy with NerdWallet says cut unused subscription or streaming TV services and shop around for the bills you can control, like car insurance. If you're looking for a new apartment, is there a washer and dryer so you can avoid laundromat expenses? Is there an on-site gym so you can ditch a gym membership? But Kelsey warns that a cheaper apartment doesn't mean you'll spend less.
Moving to a different town or neighborhood might lead to cheaper rents, but it could also increase your commuting costs.
One last tip, if you're handy, Kelsey says some landlords will give you a discount if you can help around the building.
Maybe you mow the lawn or take care of small maintenance requests in the building that helps save them money, and they might pass that savings down to you.
Stephanie just wants something affordable.
I am pretty much homeless.
If there was a single money story this past year that had people talking, it was high gas prices. Even now, that daily commute is expensive. So some people are taking a new spin on an old solution that may help.
You or your parents might remember gas lines from the 1970s, when gas was expensive and hard to find. Out of those days came carpooling.
We're about to come get you.
Where 2 or more people share the ride to split those gas costs.
How you doing, sir?
Fast forward 40 years, and LaToya Davis is carpooling home from her hospital job. She's one of many new workers signing up for carpools and van pools.
You pick everybody up, it's at the circle.
Ron Bryant coordinates this one and says it's a great way to avoid paying $5 or $6 gas prices.
Save money on gas, you have a place to park.
Now, let's say, like me, you have a 15-mile drive to work with gas at $5 a gallon. You're paying $4 each way to drive. That's $8 a day,
$40 a week. Add one rider and pay just $20 a week for gas. Add a second and pay just $13 a week.
It is a lot cheaper. Yes, and then if you do have parking costs, you split those with however many people in the van too.
Summer Jones, who oversees a community rideshare program, says it's about more than just gas prices.
It's just relaxing, saves money, saves wear and tear on your car, and just, some people really like the friendship.
The U.S. Census Bureau says carpooling peaked at 20% of all drivers in 1980, but fell to just 9% due to low gas prices. But cheap gas is gone, and riders like LaToya Davis are happy that carpooling is back.
Save gas and time, and I get to work on time.
If you threw a couple of holiday parties or hosted some out-of-town guests, your appliances probably took a beating.
So, if a major appliance like a refrigerator or dishwasher is on the fritz, what should you do? I talked to some repair experts about whether you should repair it or replace it.
Carolyn Nierenberg was frustrated beyond belief when we met her back in April with a refrigerator that kept making a watery mess.
We went to use the ice in the water mechanism and it doesn't work. It leaks all over the inside of the refrigerator.
It's a dilemma facing many of us. Should you try to repair it?
Right now we're checking pressures.
Or replace it with a brand new model?
If it's half the cost of a new one, we'll generally point them towards a new one.
Todd Leahy is president of an appliance repair shop and says there are two scenarios where he suggests tossing it. One, the repair cost is almost equal to the replacement cost, or two, you can no longer get parts.
Some manufacturers, they don't make control boards for as long as we believe they should.
While today's refrigerator or washing machine is a lot more efficient than Mom's old model, they also contain a lot of high-tech electronics that can break down a lot more quickly.
Small microprocessors, switches, and relays, those things go bad very quickly.
Michael Cornell is a repair expert with Assurion. He says first, get an expert opinion. Many appliances can be fixed on the spot, like this fridge that just had a clogged tube.
Not too big, just a drain. So we got that cleared out.
Also, consider the lifespan. 2 to 3 years old, Michael says a repair makes sense. 6 or 7 years, though.
Even though we're going to be replacing components to get it back up to steam in that moment, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have other failures along the way.
Carolyn, after multiple repairs, now tells us she finally got a brand new fridge. But the best way to prevent many breakdowns in the first place? Maintenance. Michael says check the care and use manual that comes with any appliance.
That 3 pages right there can save you literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
A threat to shut off your utilities. Hear from a woman who lost hundreds of dollars because scammers made her believe she was about to have her water turned off.
The warning signs of this scam coming up, so you don't waste your money. Thanks for staying with us as we look back at some of the top don't waste your money reports of the past year. Up next, a common but malicious trick. Scammers calling you, threatening to shut off your electricity or water if you don't pay up immediately. One woman who lost hundreds of dollars to this scam shared her story so you don't fall for the same scheme.
Denise Banks always pays her water bill. But the other day,
I received a phone call on my cell phone.
a caller claiming to be from her local waterworks said she was about to be cut off.
They knew my name and they said, "We're here to talk to you about your disconnect notice. We have someone outside that's going to disconnect your water."
They demanded she pay $235 via Zelle. So she gave her bank information, and within seconds,
It automatically went into my personal checking and savings, and it took all of my money.
But there was no one waiting outside her house to turn off her water or her electric or whatever. Utilities will never call you threatening immediate shutoff unless you pay them on the spot. But scammers know how to target our fears of disconnection.
If you're faced with the possibility of having your heat turned off, your AC turned off, you start convincing yourself of things that aren't real and aren't legitimate.
Josh Planos with the Better Business Bureau says the thought of losing a service you desperately need is enough for some people to hand over personal information.
Water, heating and air, you name it.
He says utility scams like these are often weather-related during a heat wave or cold snap.
If you know that a region is going to be more dependent on a utility, you target that region.
He says with winter in full swing, be extra cautious of phone calls about your heating or electric bill, service workers showing up at your home without an appointment, or payment requests that are untraceable, like gift cards, Zelle, or Venmo. The FTC says utility companies will always notify you in writing before shutting off service. Denise just wants to warn others.
Even though you get those automated calls, just call back in and talk to somebody, in person.
Now a warning about some letters that may show up in your mailbox. Do you ever notice that your mail is filled with ads and flyers for things you never signed up for? Most of them are innocent coupons, but as you're about to see, some take it too far.
Sheila Kipley opened her mailbox the other day to find a strange letter inside.
Extremely urgent and time sensitive.
Demanding that she and her husband John give it their immediate attention.
It indicated that we already had this homeowners policy and that it was about to expire.
But John and Sheila had no recollection of ever being customers.
I didn't know that I had a home warranty.
Homeowners from all over the country, from 28 states so far, have complained to the Better Business Bureau about mailers like this. Most come from a company called U.S. Home Guard. Renato Brazil received a U.S. Home Guard letter and says he could see his father panicking and sending money.
This is predatory. Because my father could fall for this. I mean, he would just send a check, he doesn't even know who they are.
Sure, it's nice to know if a major appliance of yours fails, you're not going to be hit with a $5,000 repair bill. But the Better Business Bureau says responding to some urgent letter in the mail is not the best way to do it.
The BBB now has issued a warning about the letters. The BBB's Sarah Wetzel saying many homeowners feel misled.
Consumers were telling us that they weren't customers of this company, but the way the flyers read, it made them feel like they were.
The BBB says be wary of phrases like final notice or must respond.
There was definitely the sense of urgency that consumers felt like they needed to respond immediately.
But the truth is there's no need to act. We called U.S. Home Guard, but have not received a response. So how do you stop these types of mailers? One option is an opt-out service called dmachoice.org. Or you can reach out to the company directly. Or do what Sheila and John plan to do, ignore it.
Just entirely inappropriate as far as I'm concerned.
That way you don't waste your money.
Work from home jobs offer lots of flexibility, but not as much as coveted work from anywhere jobs.
What makes these jobs different and why they're so hard to get? Plus, earning cash by renting your backyard to dogs.
Those stories coming up in our Don't Waste Your Money special in 2 minutes. I'm John Matarese. Welcome back to our 30-minute special where we're taking a look at the top Don't Waste Your Money reports of 2022. For many people, the new year means a fresh start and maybe a new job. Well, one thing I recently learned, a lot of people don't want to go back to working in an office. They want to be able to work anywhere they want.
I love it.
Carrie Chenault started working from home when the pandemic hit
My office.
and never wants to return to the daily commute.
It was 2 hours a day. It was a disaster. What time can we do that for you?
This logistics coordinator for an HVAC company now appreciates the extra time she gets for family and her hobby, painting.
I have the ability to have a much better balance than I've ever had.
After working from home much of the past 2 years, many people like Carrie have decided they like the flexibility and lower stress of working remotely. And they don't want to have to dress up every day and be back